Is Anca Dan. I am a classicist, I'd like to say. So classicist in the meaning of Altertumwissenschaft, because since the beginning of my university studies, I always wanted to study not only philology, so ancient languages like Greek, Latin, a little bit of Egyptian, Akkadian, Hebrew, and so on. But also do archaeology and, of course, what's in between history, because I think in order to understand the past, and for a region and for a specific period. And my region is more or less Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, Black Sea, and the period is Antiquity. In order to understand this well, one has to use all the sources. And since these things were studied for many centuries now, it's not so easy to come out with new ideas. So by bringing together different sources, which were not all known in different periods and so on, with the help of new publications and computers and programs and new field work, so we can come out with ideas which fit better the interests of our times, because what we are working on, like researcher, is of course for the public of today and of tomorrow. We want to help society and to give a better knowledge about who our ancestors, if we want to judge in these terms, which are critical, we can discuss about it, or let's say people who were there before us have done. So in this moment, I am in Greece, in Athens, and I'm running a geoarchaeological project at the border between Greece and Turkey on the Hebros River. My main specialities, let's say, interest is in history of archaeology, geoarchaeology, so space-related identities, space-related history. So concretely, what I'm trying to do in this kind of project that I'm running also on the Turkish side of the Hebros, and I was dealing with participating in other similar projects around the Black Sea or in Turkey or in Italy, is to reconstruct the ancient landscapes. So the idea is to see how a river developed, how it formed its delta in the last 7,000 years, how people settled there, what are the relationship between the communities, why some people pick up a certain place to found like a village or a city, how they connect, interact with the others, who is coming to settle there, so the migration question also, how people transform the environment and how they react to environmental crisis, to catastrophe. Do they run away? Do they try to stay? What are the plants? What are people eating? How they transform the vegetation and the fauna, and so on. And all this, we do it by bringing together specialists of various fields. So my job as a classicist, so philologist and archaeologist, is to bring together all the texts in different languages and to translate them, not only linguistic translation from Greek and Latin, but also interpretation, we would say, because of course when I'm discussing with physicians, biologists, and so they want a discourse in our current language. You know, they want things to be clear. They ask me, what is the text saying, in what date this site burned, what was cultivated on this field. And it's difficult, but I have to explain them that, well, you know, in Greek, we do not know exactly the name of the plants. They are not really corresponding to what we have today. And of course, you know, the chronological system in ancient texts is not always so clear as today, and so on. So this interpretation work is my job. And then, of course, I'm going on the field and I'm doing excavation. Archaeological excavations, collaborating with other archaeologists, ceramologists, and the specialists of various disciplines inside archaeology. But we do this archaeology in a modern way, so our projects are complex. We don't go just to excavate, to make the hole, the trench. We go there only after we have done the maximum we can by non-invasive and micro-invasive studies. Our purpose is not to unveil ancient ruins and to collect objects for the museums, because this we have a lot and we are having a lot of work to do in order to explain this for the people, to present them for tourists. Our work is also to protect the maximum we can in order other generation to have also ruins to study with much more advanced techniques, as this will be in 100-200 years. So non-invasive and micro-invasive is our priority. We go to excavate only when we finished all these methods, and we really try to make small intrusions and to find the best way also to protect what we excavate. Otherwise, archaeology is, let's say, destruction. If we and this happened, unfortunately, in the last centuries, and now most of our colleagues, what they are doing is to try to interpret and to publish what the previous generations did when they learned. No, we learned a lot and we are still learning. And in 100 years, people will also say that we destroyed things. But yeah, we try to do it in a limited way. What we are doing, so it's geophysics. So with various methods, seismic methods, magnetic, electromagnetic, radar, GPR. Then we do geomorphology, we do drillings, we extract cores of 10 centimeters diameter that we analyze by geology in order to see the various strata. And then also by organic, non-organic matter, and then by paleobiology, so examining, you know, all the biological rest, by palynology, looking at pollen and so on, and dating all this with carbon-14 usually, but we can have also other datation techniques. And we do quite a lot of these drills that we put together with all the geophysical methods and on geological maps, combining all this with GIS, modelization, you know, drone photogrammetry and so on, 3D scans and all. And only then, when we know already everything which is on the surface and as much as we can find out from the inside with these micro-invasive methods, then we decide to go for excavation at some points. And this we will try to do it in Greece, in the site which is called Oriskos from the next year, with the help of the French School in Athens, German universities of Kiel, in particular, Kiel Excellence Cluster, which is absolutely exceptional in working in geophysical work, archaeological work. Köln University, Göttingen University, and other colleagues, of course, also in Greece. And by doing that, we continue what we did on the Turkish side of the river in Ainos, also with these German universities and with the help of the French government, my institution, CNRS, so National Research Foundation, École Normale Supérieure. So French, German, Turkish, Greek collaboration. I'm speaking about Greece and Turkey. We are working on the borders because these borders are modern, of course, very modern. 1920, you know, after the 21, the exchange of populations. But, you know, nature does not know about borders, about this kind of borders. We are all on a spacecraft, which is Earth, and it brings us an amazing journey through the universe. And I'm trying to show, I believe, that the borders of Europe, because this border between Greece and Turkey today is the border of the European Union, we can do research together. There are amazing people on both sides. We all share the same interest. This region is now hidden by burning destructive fires. Our research is also of interest for what it is today and for what it would be tomorrow. We do seismology, seismography. So what we try to do is to map the microtectonic plates in order to see how the river formed. So this will serve the research and the measures for earthquakes, because you know Turkey and Greece are in great dangers of earthquakes. By our paleobiological work, which is done by Ludmila Shumilovsky in Göttingen, we can document the actual vegetation, which, for example, burned now, and we can see how it varied during the last third millennia. and we can offer better solutions for politicians and local administration who would say, what plants should we put there? And we can see, look what it was there, look what people did, how they modified, look what are the frequencies of fires in the past, and so on. So this is a clear example of how we can offer information about geography and biology, and of course in history, a little bit about the heritage, our sites. Both Ainos on the Turkish side and Doriskos on the Greek side are sites or are crossroads of civilization between the people of the sea and the people of the hinterland. So between the Greeks and the Thracians in antiquity, but also the Persians came there when they advanced, in the Greco-Persian wars. So Darius was in Doriskos, probably founded Doriskos. We don't know. We have to excavate to see. Xerxes was there, and then of course the Macedonians came, Philip and Alexander. So with all this, of course, we try to improve the knowledge of history, but also to have a real impact today.
Wow. Anca, I hope we won't need an explanation of all the terms, etc., that you used. No, I'm joking. It's impressive. Maybe we can connect with this, what you just said. How do you manage all these things? Because it sounds very complex. And I know you're a very busy person, very productive. I have seen your publication list, your CV, etc. Maybe you could answer us two questions. First, how did you construct all this experience, all these excavations, your studies, your interests from your beginnings in Romania? And second, how is your average day look like? For example, now you're in Athens. You told me about your experience in northern Greece with the fires, etc. Very dramatical and emotional. But you wake up, then you start already reading, writing. How does it look like?
Yeah, so the good thing when one is a researcher is that no day looks like the other before. So it's like a total adventure, the life of a researcher, of an academic. And it is difficult to become an academic. Very few people manage to do it. And it's not always about the personal value. It's also a little bit of luck, of context, of people one meets, the professors who support or don't support someone, do not support someone. In my life, I was a migrant myself. So coming from Romania, starting classics. So the field which was considered as with no future at that moment, which was considered to be good only for students who have coming from wealthy families who can afford everything, and then they will have the family connections to get a job. And I had nothing of that. So I'm coming from a family of workers who my mother lost her job after the fall of communism, because communist Romania had a lot of enterprises, fabrics and so, which were just running, a little bit not after the capitalist concurrential and competition law. So the situation of my family was very, very modest, and but still I had teachers who encouraged me. And since I was a child, I was thinking that we live only once. Yeah, I'm a believer, but let's say what we know for sure as scientists, that we have this life. We don't know more for sure. I wanted to do what I like, and I think it's amazing to be a scientist. It's amazing to be a scientist in the natural science, in physical science, mathematics. And since I was in schools which were not so good, so in the periphery in Romania and so on, humanities were more accessible for me because they did not need so much training. My parents could not pay for private classes as most of the parents do in Romania. So the Latin teacher who did not have many students, formed me for free. And then I went to the universities and I had fellowships and so on. And this is how I continued. But then I saw that, classical philology and archaeology is not something repetitive. You are not just learning dead languages that everybody studied and you have the last grammar in the 19th century. All this progress and there are good people all over the world who bring new ideas and put interested in new shapes. And then I met people mostly first in France, and I was supported. My PhD professor, even if I was studying ancient geography, he was a specialist of philosophy. So he always pushed me to think geography as a philosophy, as a way of looking at the world, and this is the way one can understand the birth of geography. Geography is born in Greece, in Alexandria, in fact, with our Eratosthenes, in the 1st century BC, 3rd century BC. He invented the world. He invented the way to measure the Earth, the terrestrial globe, and to fix, we call today coordinates, latitude, longitude, to fix a point on the terrestrial globe. This is all Eratosthenes, and this is what we call mathematical geography. In fact, geography took over. But Eratosthenes was a Platonician, and in order to understand how he did it, one has to study ancient philosophy, because philosophy is the first way, let's say, to do science, science which is a Western concept, because in Eastern civilization, we do not really have science. We do not have these analogies, this comparative thinking in order to create model and to project in the future. We have accumulations, we have another type of thinking, but science is starting, let's say, with the Greeks, and it's something Western, or at least in this precise shape. We can discuss further. So then with my PhD professor, so Carlos Levy in Sorbonne, I learned also philosophy. And then as a postdoc in Germany, I had the amazing chance to work with Hans-Joachim Gericke, who was the director of the German Archaeological Institute, who is an historian, a very brilliant ancient historian who worked on Greek crisis, on Olympia, and on ancient geography. And he was so open to work with geoscientists and to involve German geoscientists in the DAI, in the German Archaeological Institute, on excavations. And this is how I get in touch with geoscientists, thanks to him. And I was invited on German excavations in Miletus, then on Austrian excavations in Ephesus, where all these methods were already practiced for 10, 20 years. And connecting with this older and younger geo and bioscientists, and working together in German teams, like in Russia on the Taman Peninsula, where we managed to make a reconstruction, changing completely the ancient geography of the northeastern Black Sea part, and not only historical geography, but total history, because if you change the identification of sites, you change the history of those communities totally. Then I learned how to do it, and I tried to imagine myself how to improve this model of collaboration between different disciplines. And now we are doing it on my, so to say, the project. So the teams I am coordinating with Turkish colleagues in Turkey, Said Basharan in Ainos, with Greek colleagues in Greece, Krisa Karadima, Donna Terzopoulou. We always collaborate with people, of course, who know the best the field, who are responsible for these fields. And we are just bringing some new resources, let's say, and ideas, and together we are constructing this. So it's a totally scientific, democratic, so to say, collaboration and support. So I was very lucky to have support from all these people. I'm still at the beginning, unfortunately. So even if I have a certain age, so to say, I'm still at the beginning, and I hope to be able to form myself students and to bring publications and results important for the field, because we are in the service of the field. My you were asking me about my day.
Average day.
So yeah, none is like another. So there are days when I'm on the field. So we wake up at 6 o'clock. We have breakfast, and we go on the field, and then we do measures in geophysics, or we do drills in geomorphology, or we do an excavation in archaeology. We come back in the evenings. We are answering emails, making Zoom conferences, some classes sometimes, because there are some summer schools where I'm also trying to teach and so on. And then we'll have a very nice dinner and discussions and planning for the next day. This would be on the excavations. Or we are usually working also in the weekends, especially with German teams, but also French teams, of course. An excavation is quite expensive, so we do not afford to stay there. It's public money. We respect this very much. We are very grateful. So an excavation season or a field research means that we work from Monday to Sunday. Similarly, maybe on Sunday we can do a little bit reduce in order to have more strength on Monday, but there is no free day. Then when I'm not on the excavation, there are periods when I can be invited in other universities, so preparing conferences, classes. We're working with colleagues on publications. Some publications are done by myself alone, especially when they are dealing only with humanities, so history, archaeology, and but very little archaeology, more history and literature. Others are in teams from 2 up to 20 persons or even more.
Wow.
And we do these publications. I'm writing, you know, a draft, or someone else is writing a draft, and then we complete it. We add and we exchange by email, or we see each other by Zoom. And then by email, we add figures, we add text, and we exchange, and then we send the paper. So this is another part. Then I have days when it is there are classes. I'm in Paris, so usually I wake up answering emails, you know, going to the office in order to see students, to have classes. Sometimes my classes are in museums. I'm trying to get the students out of the class in order to show them that everything is alive. There are days when I am teaching and when I am at the École Normale Supérieure. So in this case, I'm waking up in the morning, going to the office, receive students, go with them to classes, either in the school or in museums, because I'm trying to present the heritage we have in various museums, to make them meet people of various disciplines who work for these collections we can have, be it texts, you know, libraries, or collections of art history, of statues, paintings, everything which can be related to antiquity. And then, yeah, you know, going home, trying to motivate myself to make some sport, dealing with, you know, private life, meeting friends. Yeah, just normal life. But it is true that being a researcher is a way of life, is a way of thinking. We live with that all the time. It is not easy for our families. One needs to have families with a lot of generosity and patience. But I think it is a great experience. And in any case, I'm happy.
And Anca, what do you think? We were talking about migration first, off recording. What do you think in general? Of course, this is a very general question, but you know, it's something I'm working with. We talked a little bit, but maybe you could tell us a little bit on this issue of migration.
Yeah, we are dealing with it since my projects, geoarchaeological projects, are on the Hebros River, so the frontier of the European Union. It is a crossing point for migrants, and we just found out that some migrants burned alive, or in any case burned in this Dadia forest after passing to Greece. So this is a horrible catastrophe. What I'm thinking about migrations is that people moved around for hundreds of thousands of years. This is in the human nature. We are all, we were saying the Earth is just a space ship, a spacecraft, and we are moving through universe. There are no natural barriers. And this, you can just look at what the astronauts are telling you when they are looking from, you know, the International Space Station, or you can look at Mars or Venus, and you don't see any border there. Yeah, what I'm thinking is that this is political. It has always been political. And it became harder with, hard frontiers. When states in history tried to put hard frontiers, not say, soft frontiers, it always became that the conflicts were more visible than before. And of course, with the creation of national states in the 18th century, this became even more the conflicts became stronger. The migrations indeed changed because people were attracted of the wealthy of some states, which exploited the others. One has to say it. And we have the current situation. The current situation can be compared with what we had in antiquity. Since classical Athens, people wanted to come 2,500 years ago. They wanted to migrate to Athens, and there were laws for, giving them or not the citizenship, the citizen rights to the male, of course, free males. We are not speaking about women. We are not speaking about slaves. We have all, this thinking about the laws, about the metoikoi, the metek, all over history. What we have also is, we are discussing that what is the difference between movement of population and migration, about traveling, about being a guest somewhere, and about being a migrant. There is all a rhetoric of migration. There are narratives of migration, Wanderungs narrative. We always have to explain this as historians to people, because let's say that the migration is defined by the stronger one. So the strong state, the strong political person decides who is a migrant and who is not. This is quite problematic. It is colonialist. We are trying now, and this is a challenge for classics, to decolonialize the world, isn't it? So we have to recognize that Altertumwissenschaft, so classics, if we want, or sciences de l'Antiquité in my French language, were born in the end of the 18th century and beginning of the 19th century. And they were born in a context of colonialism. They were born in order to show that some people are better than the others, and classics served that. So they were an instrument. We cannot deny that. British people went in India on the traces of Alexander the Great. And the story of Alexander, as told by Arrian and Plutarch, was used in order to prove the British superiority above Indians. Or this happened in the other continents, of the story of the Amazons and so on. All these people where, for example, women could fight and so on, were considered, like the barbarians, Amazon, and all the speech came from antiquity and the imagination and so on, showing that they are not so good as the European, that the slaves could become slaves, that there was a justice, so to say. This is about classics. Then classics is also about the constitution of collections in museums. So we made excavations in various countries, and we have the wonderful museums of the West. And now other people are claiming their heritage, and this is extremely complicated, because themselves, these people who reclaim their heritage, took other things from others. So it's not so simple. When some countries claim their heritage, they forget that they are in big museums, they have the things of the others, and they don't want to recognize. So it's complicated, but it is about this justice of art history, and it is fair now to destroy the museums, when in fact, if these monuments were not put into that, museums would be probably destroyed now, because all this was the invention of classics and archaeology and art history, and so on. Then classics were also used about the celebration of civilizations. So speaking about geoarchaeology and nature, it was to show how great it is that the man could master the nature, we could make very nice monuments and so on, not thinking about the vegetation, fauna, and so on. So this is with geography, but then we also with migration. So look, we are the best and look who are our ancestors. We are coming directly from the Romans, or we are coming directly from the Greeks. So I think now this is the challenge of the classics, and I really believe in it, because we can use classics in order to explain how we made up these speeches in the last 200 years, 300 years, and to show what was good. If there is something good, we have to ask ourselves critically, and to show what we did wrong, in order to explain to others who are doing the same thing with their own classics, because we have many civilizations now, several, which try to show that they have their classics and they are repeating our mistakes in the West, to explain them what we did, and also to show that the classics, indeed, there is something good in the classics, because if this process worked, it is because our classics have an important value. So it is true that philosophy was invented. It is true about the invention of science. It is true that Greek art represents an ideal, and it represents itself that so many people in this world attached, adhered. So they took this ideal and made their own art out of it. So, it touched something psychological, and this we can explain by cognitive science, and so either by literature or aesthetic arts and so on. So this is the reinvention of classics, and in the specific field of migration, we can explain a lot of things, either for city-states and ethnes, so starting from Greek history, or from imperia. So by comparing the Romans with the Assyrians, with the Persians, and with other empires who used migration rhetorically, politically, military, by moving people, really, in fact, military, economically, politically, or by claiming, that their decline came out of migration. So this is Van der Rohe's narrative.
Wow, very impressive. I wonder how do you manage to read on all these topics and to organize them well in your head. Anything in particular that you're reading now? Of course, academic papers, but in general, I guess you're also a reader, because many of our audience, we talk also about books. Something that you could recommend?
Oh, there are many things I could recommend. So to be honest, in this moment, I'm working on some papers on Central Asia, on Greeks or in Central Asia. So I'm interested in, I was telling you, geography and ethnography. So how people become a people. How can people who are put together recognize themselves as a community, as an ethnos in Greek? And I'm interested about the Greeks in confrontation with other populations, and about why other populations adhere in antiquity at various times the Greek model. So, and for this, there is a big issue, I think, in Central Asia, at the end of what we call the Silk Road, because we have this Greco-Buddhist art, so-called. These are modern concepts. And then we have a Syro-Indian art, which is an art born between, let's say today, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and China. In antiquity, would be, let's say, the Western Chinese, let's say, provinces or lands, which were sometimes integrated into Chinese dynasties. And in this Central Asia part, there is this Greco-Buddhist art, which made a fusion with art of the steppe, of the nomads, of the, let's say, Scythians, or ESD, other, the migrant populations from the north, like the Kushans, and made something which has big connections with the Greek and the Roman art. So I'm working on this kind of art, and I'm trying to see the last echoes, let's say, of Hellenism. And why I'm interested is that why someone from the Northern Wei dynasties at the end of the 4th and throughout the 5th century AD in Pingqing, so Datong today in northern China, would take a gold vase, probably made in northern India, representing Dionysos and Heracles naked in a victory chariot, like on a coin of Septimius Severus at the beginning of the 3rd century AD in 204. Why they would represent that and put them in their tomb, when of course it's not it is beautiful, yeah, but they have
Very
other beautiful
intercultural.
things for their own. Yeah, and what is this attraction for exotica? Exotica that we can see, we can touch today, like gold. Exotica that we don't have anymore, like wine, which came to China from Central Asia. And why these models, which were quite shocking, nudity of people and so on, and all this myth, which is related, of course, with power, with conquest, with Alexander the Great, because on this base I'm writing about it now. It is Dionysos and Heracles, let's say two gods, son of Zeus, isn't it? So half human, half gods, like Alexander, and they are recognized there. And I think people who used all these models coming from the West knew pretty well what they are talking about. Of course, there are regional legends and traditions, but they are knowing that this is foreign, that this has a specific meaning. And of course, we are speaking with this diffusion of the Hellenism very, very far away to a diffusion in at the level of elites. So it's not normal people who had this, but only very high officials, probably related with the ruling to the emperor family and so on. So I'm writing about that, and usually when I'm writing an article, I'm reading a lot, like dozens or hundreds of papers. I'm trying to read everything, even if today, unfortunately, we have an inflation of publications, and most of them don't bring anything. I'm angry against these authors who do this for their careers, because I feel like I need to read everything. And I'm trying to read really absolutely everything. I have the chance in France to have good libraries and universities which give me everything I need, and this is a huge chance, and we have to be very thankful in the West that we have these possibilities, but also with internet and with the generosity of the colleagues. So I'm focusing. When I'm not writing a paper, let's say 2-3 days between papers, I like to read books. I'm trying to, I like very much poetry, and I'm reading also classical literature, so not classical from antiquity, but modern literature. So I'm reading blogs. I like to see what people are thinking, about modern issues, and I like very much also to watch blogs on the YouTube. Usually, I don't know, like a humanity person, like humanism. I like to watch scientific blogs very much about astronomy, physics, mathematics. Maybe it is something because I did not do it properly in the school. I think one can start at any age. And another passion for me is to learn foreign languages. I think there is no age to learn a language. Until last year, I was learning intensively classical Hebrew. And I'm struggling with some other languages, ancient and also modern. So when I have some time, I'm trying to go back and to watch movies, read texts in languages, because the knowledge of a language is always flexible. So one needs to practice it, to talk, to see the movie, to read the books, and so on, and through music also. Or so I'm trying always to advance into the learning of languages.
Wow, very productive and very interesting indeed. You mentioned, maybe you can just briefly tell us a little bit about the Genos, about maybe a spoiler alert about your next text or article book that you were mentioning. how do people become people? How do they get organized historically, for example, to differentiate them from another people, no? Because you mentioned it, and it is very, of course, very actual also, often politically used. And you mentioned also before divide et impera, etc. No? So maybe you could tell us, if it's possible, of course, a little bit on this topic.
Yes, so about first of all, there is a big difference between nation and ethnos, of course. Nations and national state in particular appear with Enlightenment. So it is an invention of the last 300 years. And the big point in this invention, in this creation of the modern nations, is the French Revolution and the French people who took its destiny into its hands. And all this went to America, of course, and this is how we have the modern national states and modern nations. Of course, the root of this modern nation can go back to Renaissance and maybe at some point to late antiquity. So we have all these late and ancient texts speaking about the barbarian people who came out and made, you know, medieval states. But we are not there. We are in a kingship mentality, in a dynastic mentality, and not in a national mentality. And in order to understand this, I think there is a good point to look at how these communities, how these people, let's say, formulated their origins. So until the 18th century, the myth in Europe of the Trojan origins was very strong. So many people in, you know, Germans, French, British people consider themselves just like the Romans before them, and some already Gallic Celtic tribes between the Romans and then the French, the Germans, and the British consider them as migrants from Troy. And this was done on a dynastic line, let's say. So not necessarily all the people, but the chiefs, the best of these people, were considered trying to invent, you know, mythical genealogies are coming from Hector, from, you know, Andromache or Paris, or some kind related with Priam and so. All these mythical genealogies were at the basis, let's say, of these medieval kingdoms and then of this, so to say, people. But what happened in the 19th century is that with the invention of the modern nation, natio, with the idea of birth, is the relationship with a territory. So people stop thinking about Homer and Troy and so on. And of course, all this is erudite, you know, it happened in schools and it's a political discourse and so on. People try to relate themselves with what it was known from ancient sources, but in their territories, because a national state, it is related with strictly related to a territory which look for natural frontiers. And this is also national geography of the 19th century, that there are natural frontiers. In reality, we know that there are no natural frontiers. People crossed Himalaya more or less with difficulties, but yeah. But let's say that there are more or less, there are hard spaces which can be more or less controlled when crossing, you know. The idea of frontier is much more complex, you know it very well, because in your research cluster, you have people, very brilliant people working on these topics. So the concept of frontier is very complicated and very political. And yeah, all this, so when, you know, the Germans start to say, okay, we are the Germans from Tacitus and already from Caesar, and French people said, well, we are, you know, Vercingetorix sons and so on. And yeah, everybody connected to the national antiquities. This is a basis of the national state. In antiquity, we do not have this, you know, we are in this logic which lasted until the 18th century of relating a community, especially through its leaders, through its best people, so to say, through a mythical genealogy to, you know, what this community wanted to look like from outside. And this is, it's what I would call an ethnos related thinking, you know. So the ethnic thinking, it is in some cases related with the national, let's say national or today, but in antiquity it was not national, but let's say the space where the ethnos developed. But it's rare. It is in the case of the Athenians. Yeah, they think they are autochthonoi, huh? But most of the ancient communities did not think that they were local. They thought that they came from someone else. And yeah, I'm with some French colleagues, directed by a French historian, Violette Sébiot, professor in Paris 1. We are writing now an academic school book about the history of Europe, the ancient history of Europe. What was striking me by writing some text is that the Europeans, unlike other people from other continents, always thought of themselves as migrants. It's interesting because when we compare, it's always interesting to compare, of course, with the Chinese, with the Indians, with mythologies in Africa. And so people usually outside Europe don't represent themselves so often as coming from someone else. But due to this Trojan myth and also all the Greek mythology before, probably because the Greeks were born in the Mediterranean and in an insular context and so on. So they are moving, they were in contact. They brought, let's say, to Europe this thinking about moving origins. The Greeks themselves thought about themselves, at Catmos coming either from let's say Syrian lands, or they like Danaos, imagining that they are coming from Egypt and so on. The Romans were coming from Troy and so on. It's all this mythology about migrations. And all this is for me related with ethnos, with thinking of ethnos, in which migration was not negative. It is necessarily in a thinking of the national state, of the modern national state. So let's think about the Aeneid. Some people call it, the national poem, and so it's not national, but it shows the Aeneid of Virgil. It is, for me, a good abstract of the migration which took part, which were common in antiquity, context throughout the Mediterraneans, and not only a reality of contacts, political and economic contacts, but also the mythical projection, how people thought of themselves as coming from someone else. And if Augustus commanded this work and it was read and so much known in the Roman Empire, it is certainly because, this kind of migration was not, migration in itself was not negative at all. Barbarism was negative, and this kind of military invasion and military danger on the Roman Empire was negative. So we really have to explain this much better.
Very interesting. I saw just now that you were speaking about Asia and Africa, in Latin America, in pre-Columbine world, for example, there is also like this mythos of, for example, in the Aztec Empire, they also migrated from the north to Tenochtitlan and founded Tenochtitlan, of course. So this is, there it comes also, a little bit, I think, also in Popol Vuh from the Mayans. So, but very, very interesting approach. And Anca, I could listen hours and hours, and I guess we will do it soon personally. But maybe just to conclude, it will be the first part. I hope we can do another session. What will be like? How do you see yourself in the next years? You will focus also, continue your work on these areas after the publications of the works you are doing, or what can we expect? What is the future bringing?
I'm trying to be a good professor for
You
the
are
students.
definitely.
I'm trying to tell them that classics like history in general, it's useful, of course. It can give concrete answers to scientists. Scientists who ask very concrete questions, not literary, pleasure, or we can give data from history. So what I'm doing now, so trying to explain them, give them dates, you know, really information. And I try to do this with my students to encourage them to find themselves, because we don't have to transmit something. I mean, students have to find their way and find a new way for science by themselves. I'm trying to publish my books, so classics editions of Greek and Roman texts, which are not yet published in a modern language, and so on, and explain them. Things about Central Asia and Hellenism, so how this amazing, let's say, Greek Hellenistic culture influenced all the other cultures. Roman culture is a Hellenistic culture from my point of view. Sorry for the Romanist. I'm trying to understand why. What have these ancient Greeks done, and how we used, good or not so good, what they have done in modern times, and have the courage to explain it critically. You were asking me about publications of the last, let's say, collection of articles we have done in Dialogue d'Histoire Ancienne this year, 2023. It was about Roman ethnogenesis, about the formation of the Roman people. And what I like very much is debate between scientists. In humanities, we do not have to forget about debate. It's nothing personal, but we can have very different opinions. So in this Dialogue d'Histoire Ancienne 2023, the first volume, we have a debate between two very brilliant French professors, Florence Dupont and Alexandre Grandati, who defend different opinions about the creation of the Latin of Rome and the Latin ethnos. Was there any Latin ethnos before the foundation of Rome, or even before the 4th, 3rd century BC, because the data are quite shaking and we can interpret them. And you'll see there are two different opposed interpretations, and also articles about how in conflict with Rome, different communities were invented as ethne. So in fact, the Romans invented people in order to put a name in and an identity on their enemies, and this happened very clearly in Spain. So and also in other parts. So all these are things on which I'm trying to work in order, to give like you do, and your once again amazing research center with young people trying to give answers to the society of today.
Well, Anca, thank you very much for this interesting conversation. And well, we wish you all the best in Greece during this excavation. And we hope also for the well-being of all of you, of nature, of migrants, of all the people there, that nothing more happens, because we sadly heard in the news what happened. So, well, and stay safe, and we keep in touch. And it was really a pleasure listening and learning. I took so many notes. So we will continue with the conversation.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Anca. Ciao. So,